It's wonderful. Hi. Hey guys, it's that time again. Yep, that's right. It's time for everyone's list to come out. Game of the Year 2019, which should win? Game of the Year 2019 so far. The best games of 2019. Didn't do anything new. Why Smash Bros. Ultimate will win Game of the Year. The top 10 games of the decade? Wow. Wow, this guy knows the best games of the decade? What are they? I didn't realize it was your top 10. Who else's top 10 would it be? Whose top 10 is it supposed to be? The top 10 of the collective minds of the entire world? The best video games of 2019 are... Look at all these people letting me know all of the best games of the year. What would I do without them? End of the year, and you know what that means. Everyone's pumping out their best games of 2019. The real question is... Who needs that? We already know all the best games because it's all anyone's been talking about all year.
Is Death Stranding already Game of the Year?
Well, critics seem to think so.
The remake of Resident Evil 2 handily won Game of the Year.
Games of the Year so far.
Top 10 best games of 2019 so far.
10 of the best games of 2019 so far.
What else could be more exciting than an arbitrary award show? In fact, here's a list of basically every single game that's gonna show up on practically everybody's top 10 list. I think that basically covers it. We already know all of those things. We don't need to be told about the games that we've been hearing about all year. What I wanted to do was check out the worst games of 2019. And no. I'm not talking about games that were disappointing or AAA letdowns. Like, yes, Anthem was a burning dumpster fire, true, but it's the top of the pile. There's trash that you can sift through and make your way all the way to the bottom, the sludge, the garbage, the worst of the worst. What games make up that part of the trash can? But first, time for me to pay those bills. Today's video is being sponsored by Epic Games, and they want me to talk with you about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which officially makes this the easiest sponsorship I've ever had to do. I really like this game. I've been playing it pretty much non-stop since it came out. It's one of the first single-player games in a while that I've managed to dive in and really enjoy. The action combat's been a lot of fun, unlocking new abilities as you go on. I'm playing it on the hardest difficulty, which actually has provided a fairly significant challenge. I really just love as well kind of the narrative and the level design. They've got these intricate levels that wind back on themselves with various puzzles in them and blocked off areas that require you to gain access to new abilities to further reach, giving you access to additional parts of the level and new unlockables and things. It's been a really fun game. I've been having a great time. I've already talked about it a bunch on social media. Thank you to Epic Games for sponsoring this video. I do have a link in the description below. Also use my code forcezugzug to support the channel. They just wanted you to know that Jedi Fallen Order is available on the Epic Games Store. You can get it for $59.99. And if you download it there, you'll also unlock a free Stormtrooper skin in Fortnite. Okay, so let's talk about the worst games of 2019. So how am I gonna come to this conclusion? Well, I'm gonna exclude early access janky games and Kickstarter games, things that aren't really technically finished. I wanna look at games that people cared enough to play and review, but were still so bad that they just got terrible scores. And here's what I came up with. My method of doing this was heading on over to OpenCritic, sorting by review score of games released in 2019, and then making my way all the way to the back of the list. I then referenced that against Metacritic, Steam reviews, and user scores, and came up with what I deem to be the 5 worst reviewed games of 2019. We're gonna check those out. Now, the first game on this list is something you've actually probably heard of.
Somehow she's still in this matchup. It's unbelievable. Oh no, this isn't gonna end well.
The scores were pretty awful for a game of, I guess, this caliber and notoriety. On OpenCritic, getting a 40 out of 100 and only 2% critic recommendation. Metacritic gave it a 43 and a 0.4 user score. That might be one of the lowest user scores I've ever seen. On Steam, this has also got a mostly negative score. This thing was just a pile of trash.
Can Charlotte do this here? Charlotte's on one leg. Stepping through, looking for the figure 4 leg lock. Can she break? She does. Figure 8.
Nikki Bella's reign is in dire
straits right now.
You couldn't escape WWE 2K20 this year, but it wasn't for good reasons. This thing was just an incredibly janky pile of garbage, and everyone knows it. 2K20 is a buggy mess, but its gameplay also feels notably worse than previous years. I mean, I don't even know how that happens. How do you release a game that's just basically a slight alteration of previous year's games and make it worse than it was before? 2K20 plays like a work in progress demo that's yet to be stress test, but there's a decent game somewhere under this hot mess. That's probably the most generous thing that you'll find about this particular game. 2K20 is a calamitous new entry in the wrestling franchise. Yeah, just like nobody liked this game. Typically these things come out and they're just whatever, you know, they're mediocre. Fans of wrestling might pick them up, but I don't hear a lot of my gaming buddies playing these wrestling games year after year. It was just crazy that this thing came out and was just such a mess. And again, look at that, only 2% of critics recommend it. That's really bad. I feel like I've been robbed. More broken than my parents' marriage. Okay. Yeah, this was the most high-profile game on this list that was just obvious utter trash. It just felt weird because this is such a, you know, being a big AAA release, usually these games, they might be super disappointing, but they aren't usually technically so awful. But 2K20 managed to actually be a decent budget game of a series that normally does okay for itself, enough to warrant these yearly releases. But this one was just so utterly bad. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's move on to what just progressively falls deeper and deeper down the trash can. This game is called Eternity: The Last Unicorn.
What's this game called again?
Eternity.
Eternity, the last unicorn.
The last unicorn.
Eternity, the last unicorn. These are yellow magic roots. Great.
If you smoke those.
I wish I could smoke something at this stage.
Some yellow magic roots.
Anything to make this game a little bit more interesting.
On OpenCritic, it got a score of 44 with 0% critic recommendation. On Metacritic, it got a 36 with a 4.6 user score. And the Steam reviews are mixed, but the review number is low enough that I assume there might be some AstroTurf views in there, quite possibly. This thing just looks, well...
This thing looks dreadful. What game has tank controls in 2019?
One user reviewed it and gave it 100%.
Yeah, but he's a lunatic. He's lost his marbles, clearly. Oh, look at that animation. Mortal Kombat fatalities, eat your heart out.
It's one of those games I wanted to love more than I did. The clunkiness of the controls and bad camera just ended up holding this one back for me.
I would only recommend you check this one out on a deep sale if you are really interested. For everyone else, I do not recommend it.
All right, I want to check out the officially released gameplay trailer. This is them putting their best foot forward. What is the best version of this game that you want to present to the public? What is the resolution is really, this looks like a PlayStation game. Whoa, whoa. I'm sorry, I need to double check this. What year was this game released? Superb visuals and mechanics, quote IGN. Did they really say that? Hi IGN, could you give me a quote for our game? Yeah, right, so it's got superb visuals and mechanics, right. If it means having to play Eternity to save them, you're better off letting the last unicorn go extinct. I'll be honest here, I don't feel great about myself dumping on this game and the next game on the list, because they're quite clearly like these low budget titles from fairly small studios, whereas some of the other games are just things that should have most certainly came out better. But I don't think it'd be fair to just omit these titles because they are from low budget studios, because they are still quite clearly some of the worst games released this year. So I'm sorry guys. So next up we've got Decay of Logos getting an OpenCritic score of 39 with 13% critic recommendation. On Metacritic, it actually got a 47 and a 4.7 user score, so not terrible. The Steam reviews are mixed, however. It's really not good. The combat is clunky, the elk is pretty but does nothing, objectives are really unclear, just like Dark Souls, and even some fundamental things like the inventory and gear systems are really not well designed. I hate to be so negative, but I can't recommend this game at any price. It's pretty, but that's about all it has going for it. Decay of Logos is an adventure that tests your patience more than your gaming skills. Decay of of Logos is the worst game I've ever played. It is filled with poor design decisions and mechanics that don't challenge a player and instead decide to punish them for no reason at all. Yeah, these reviews just, it's not looking good, guys.
Whether it's the choppy frame rate, equipment that disappears from your inventory, parts of the world loading in front of you, or the whole thing crashing entirely, you're probably never more than an hour or so away from something that will completely shatter your enjoyment of a game that otherwise has a lot of potential.
Aside from the technical problems, there are just too many gameplay mechanics working against you. The Dark Souls games are punishing yet rewarding, but this game's difficulty comes from tedious personal management systems and having too many features that are out of your control. While the concept is promising, Decay of Logos suffers from a lack of polish.
Even if the game receives future patches to improve its slowdown, wacky hitboxes, and constant bugs, the stiff and frustrating combat and general lack of soul would still ensure it was never really worthy of your time.
I think what's most unfortunate about this whole game is that it seems like it has good bones. Like some of the setting, the character design, the art style, and just some of the general gameplay mechanics appear like they could have eventually formed into something better. Maybe if this is a game that got a little more funding and another 1 to 2 years of development, maybe it's something that came out in the next console generation, I could foresee this being good, but it's hot garbage. This next game I'm actually surprised by, given its developer. This is a Square Enix game. It's called Left Alive, and I never heard about it prior to getting ready to make this video. Now, like looking at screenshots and some of the like gameplay trailers, it seems like it could be a potentially cool game, but according to reviews, that's a negative. OpenCritic gave it a score of 38 with 4% critic recommendations. On Metacritic, it's got a 37 and an 8.4 user score. That one really confuses me. If you head on over to Steam, the reviews are very negative. In pretty much every spot that I looked, people didn't like this game, except for the Metacritic user scores, which has me a little bit curious there. So what exactly went on with that? I don't know. Let's check out this game though.
The best way to summarize it is that it's a poorly executed Metal Gear clone with nothing done in any competent way. Why Square Enix decided to buy it up and stamp their name on it, I'll never know.
Left Alive falls flat on its face at nearly everything it attempts to do.
Left Alive falls flat in every way that it attempts to stand out.
What is with Square Enix just randomly releasing one ultra bad game every year?
Yeah, man, how this one turned out as bad as it did apparently just completely boggles my mind. Square Enix's name on it led me to believe there'd be some semblance of decency behind this title, but apparently they just felt like throwing their name on a garbage title for the sake of it. So Left Alive, better left alone. Oh man, fucking whatever. And the final game on this list, the probably worst of them all, it's Zombieland Double Tap Road Trip. Yes, this is a game based off of the Zombieland movies, and like most games based off of movies, it's not good. OpenCritic gave it a score of 37, 11% critic recommendations. Metacritic gives it a 39 with a 5.7 user score, and on Steam, it's only got a couple of reviews, and they're negative. This clearly isn't a good game.
In my opinion, I would say wait for a deep discount.
Double Tap Road Trip completely strips away the charm and wit which makes the film so endearing and replaces it with cheesy, mind-numbing dialogue sprinkled with dull gameplay. Double Tap Road Trip is everything you've come to expect from a lazy movie tie-in. I mean, I really don't need to dig much deeper with this one. I think it's blatantly obvious just looking at the gameplay. And this thing is fully priced. It's absurd and totally, clearly a complete waste of time and money. And that's enough of that. Hope you guys enjoyed checking out 5 of the worst reviewed games of 2019. You know, ultimately this is all in good fun. No harm meant to any of the developers. I do feel a teensy bad for the lower budget titles here. Some of this is just some straight up garbage shovelware, but I empathize with maybe the developers who are inexperienced with smaller budgets trying their hand at making a game. You know, it's a hell of a lot better than anything I could ever do. Look, all I do is sit here and make bad videos. So at the end of the day, we got to give a lot more kudos to people who create things versus people who just sit there and criticize things. Which would that'd be me and pretty much every other YouTuber. We're a bunch of charlatans, really.